was what defeated the Third Reich. It was full employment. And so, in the sense that the United States and the Soviet Union and Great Britain all mobilized every aspect of the economy, and in a way that I think Jonathan referred to the New Deal as being not enough, which I completely agree with, in a way that actually was inclusive and was the double victory for African Americans and for Rosie the Riveter and women in America. So it certainly is a tool, and it's a description of what governance can do. And I think when there's the void that I spoke of, that liberalism ascribes, what can fill that void can look like, inclusive leftist full employment movements, or it can look like exclusive neo-fascist movements.
In the back.
So this is for Peter. So in yours, you talk a lot about freedom. So I want to move away from Locke and move more towards like Nietzsche and existentialism and how they define morality in more individual terms, and how it's more about the choices of individuals and how they align and how they view their world, and why money is also still a public good, and we understand like the power relations that are brought by postmodernism. So how do you balance those things out in your eyes when it comes to money? How do you balance out the fact that money is a public good, but it's also used for choice, right? So use it to show our choices. That's how we do preferences and things like that. So we need it to express what we want is important in this world, but we also need it to deal with the issues that are in the system.
Thanks. So I would say two things in response. The first is, I don't think there's anything in what I've said that is incompatible with also understanding money as a public good.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one element of the response. The other element would be to maybe give you a little bit more of a precise interpretation of what I mean by freedom. Right? So one of the objections I actually omitted in the presentation because there's only so much time is that someone might say, are you kidding me? Money means freedom? Or especially money created through credit, right? And that means people who have debt are freer than others, right? And there's of course lots of counterexamples in our economy, and I would immediately concede that for some, money created through debt is the opposite of freedom. It binds them to paying the debt back, right? And so there I make a distinction between, well, it depends on what you get the credit for, right? If you're forced by your socioeconomic situation to get credit for basic healthcare, education, and so on, then money is not freedom in the sense that I've understood it here. Money as freedom in the sense that I've understood it here is when you can use the collateral that you have, as opposed to not have, to enhance the choices that you can make as an individual. Right? And so even the cases of where money creation favors or biases the system in favor of banks ultimately can be reduced to some individuals rather than others having more choices open than the economy. So that's the aspect of freedom I'm focusing on. But again, I don't see anything that is incompatible here with also understanding money as a public good.
First comment for Maximilian. Your paper, you may want to look at the gold cases with FDR when he was threatening to pack the Supreme Court. This is dealing with the gold standard, and the final case dealt with a gentleman loaned gold, a certain amount of gold to the government, and he wanted gold plus X number of ounces of gold back. You may want to look at the dissent of that. So they ruled that no, the government can just take away that gold and give you dollar bills and say that that's the equivalent. And the dissent basically said that if you do this, that's the end of private property in America. So actually for everybody here, it actually informs what is money and can it ever be democratic, because it is at the end of private property, and the argument and the dissent goes into that. And Peter, I think you heard my question at the beginning of the session today, as far as I asked, as far as the first receivers of money get to buy goods at a discount, and those very happy someone mentioned Cantillon effect. I was wondering if I was ever going to hear those words at this conference. But still, in your system, you have 100% banking, and you do have in the past where the banks would actually pay equity, and this is where commercial banking comes from, is that they would pay the depositors a percentage of that and pay them interest and give them a cut on the investments that they made. So you did have that in the U.S. I don't know if you're aware of that, but even in your system that you advocate, the government has to decide who gets that money first. So if you're the government and you're going to decide a contract between the three of us, right? It's you, the government bureaucrats, the experts, the deciders, who get to decide which one of us get to buy that. And I don't think that your paper or at least your presentation didn't cover that. And I'm kind of curious as to how you cover that now.
Okay, so first thing I want to say is when you say your system that you advocate.
I'm not advocating a
so
system.
No, I mean, me, right?
Oh, yeah.
So maybe I presented it that way, but in the paper I want to really put the emphasis on the diagnosis. Look, there is these distributed biases, right? And here's a menu of things of what we can do. I'm careful not to endorse one of them. I'm not saying we should go for 100% banking. I'm saying, look, we can point to these things as possible solutions for this problem, but the problem is the main thing.
Right. And you get to that, and I think you eliminate a lot of the distributed bias, but there's one that you don't mention, and that's the one.
And that's the yeah. So where I completely agree with you that even if we take commercial banks out of the equation, right, there will still be money creation. There will just be one money creator, and that's the central bank. Right? And so the money supply will grow, and then the question, especially if you have the Cantillon effect at the back of your mind, the question is still, well, who are the primary beneficiaries of the money that is being created by the central bank? So for instance, if we had a Green New Deal, and we would, we could even do that in the current system, under QE, we could buy green bonds rather than a neutral sample of the market, which is not neutral. Right? So I agree, these are political decisions. But that's where I agree with Scott. We should treat them as political decisions, right? Today, that we give them to central banks and say, I don't know, this is technocratic expertise. But there's all kinds of hidden political choices that are in there, right? So we need to bring these out of the open. Yeah.
Does somebody have a question for Jonathan? Not right now?
So, in terms of your citizen assembly example, you mentioned Iceland and Ireland. Have there been sort of smaller scale, maybe municipality level type examples that have involved either municipal budgeting or some sort of control of money at the community level?
Yeah, these have been done around the world. One for an example I find particularly fascinating, because you don't think this is where it would be occurring, is in China. James Fishkin, who's a professor who has a center that specializes in this kind of activity, actually does municipal budgeting at the municipal level within China. And so they randomly pick people from the municipality. They actually first poll the existing party elite as to how they intend to spend the money. Then they randomly pick people in municipalities in China. They deliberate, they hear different kinds of proposals of how the money can be spent. Then they come up with how they want the budget to be spent. And it's always different than what was initially set. And then that's the implementing. And this has been done in pilot type projects, and there's potential for expanding, but this has been done there. And it's been done other places around the world. So it could be, so I think it's something that could be done, like, could be replicated in other municipalities. Jackson, Mississippi has something that I've only recently heard about, but it's not a full citizen assembly isn't like randomly selected, but it's a mayor doing public policy and budget setting through popular like town hall type inputs. But I think this kind of thing could be done across municipalities.
I think we have time for maybe one more.
Thank you. Yeah, Scott mentioned earlier that the problem that we really have is overcoming ignorance. Is the fact that money is not taught. How about the fact that Larry Summers was the president of this university, and there was never a course here on money. And I say money, I mean the monetary system. That's what we're talking about, is the monetary system. We're not talking about money in banking or capital or anything like that. We're talking about money. We're talking about the public money. We're talking about so that overcoming that ignorance requires some kind of massive steps. To mention reserve banking, full reserve banking. if you create the money, there was no reserves when we created the greenbacks. There was no reserves. So read Dr. Joseph Huber's book on sovereign money, Beyond Reserve Banking. Start there, because there's no need to have a discussion about reserves. You know, as far as the morality of capitalism, what's going on with capitalism today, I'm just going to suggest a little bit of homework, which is Hyman Minsky's one of the papers that we never talk about. Never, ever talk about Hyman Minsky's paper number 127, which is titled Financial Instability and the Decline of Banking, Public Policy Implications, in which he identifies the problems of capitalism. And we've talked about them a little bit. We've touched on them a little bit, which is they create the money and then they determine the capital development of the economy. That's the superpower of capitalism. And if we don't recognize that that's the superpower of capitalism, there's no way we'll be able to deal with the immorality that comes out of it. He did suggest that the way to get to solving it is for a national monetary commission. So that's one of the things that I would say. What do you people think about moving towards a national monetary commission? That we overcome the ignorance first, and then we start to put the solutions in place.
Anybody want to take this on?
So on the ignorance, there's so many interpretations, right? And so even if I take it on myself to educate the public about money, what I would say that I believe might really not be what other people believe.
Good point.
So I think somehow we are in the process of developing a critique and getting to what democratic money might look like. I'm pessimistic personally because I think capitalism is in the way, but others seem to be more optimistic. But I think that's
Maybe one addition, I mean, to have that debate, we need to have it in the education of economists. I mean, maybe you mentioned it earlier, in the education of neoclassical economists. I studied economics, I never heard about money. For 4 years, I never heard about money. So in order to get over our disagreements, economists need to learn. I have economics colleagues who I told about these projects, and they say, I don't know how money's created in one economy.
Summers
But
is
there's
not
a reason
really
for
up
that.
to
There's a reason, because neoclassical economics, because it's available.
There's no money in neoclassical economics, it's on barter.
Yeah.
That's the problem. It's the problem.
Well, we're out of time. If you have more questions, you can come and speak to our panelists. Help me thank them.
Thank you.